Hi, I'm Jess and welcome to my first YouTube video. I thought I'd start with the White House farm killings because it's something that's been quite talked about in the news lately, and ITV did a British drama series on it, which is actually really good, so I highly recommend you watch that if you haven't. So let's get into it. I'll start with a bit of background on the family. Neville Bamber was the head of the household and he married June Speaksman in 1949. They were unable to have their own children, so they adopted two kids. They adopted Jeremy and Sheila. Jeremy and Sheila are not blood related, they came from two separate families. Both Sheila and Jeremy were privately educated as children. They then went on to college. Sheila then became a model, and she met a man called Colin Cavell, and they got married in 1977. She got pregnant and had two twin boys in 1979 called Daniel and Nicholas. Sheila's mental health then started to deteriorate, and in 1982 she and Colin got divorced, and in 1983 she went to a psychiatric hospital and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Jeremy, after college, went to New Zealand and Australia and travelled around for a bit. And about a year before the killings, he moved home and worked at the farm with his parents. So on the 7th of August in 1985, Jeremy Bamber rang the police at around 3:26am, saying that he'd received a call from his father saying that his sister had gone crazy and she had a gun, and then the line went dead. So Jeremy calls the police and they say, "Meet us there, we'll be there as quickly as we can." So Jeremy meets the police at the house, and they can hear a dog barking, but other than that they can't hear anything else. So they decide that they should wait until daylight to go into the house because they're scared that there's a hostage situation going on. So around 7:45 in the morning, armed police enter the house and they find June, Neville, the two twin boys, Nicholas and Daniel, and Sheila, all dead. They'd all been shot. And Mr. Bamber was found in the kitchen. He was slumped over a chair. He had a considerable amount of wounds compared to everybody else. It seemed like he'd been in a fight with who had ever done this. There was like smashed crockery, he had bruises, black eyes, broken nose, and he'd been shot 8 times. So it seems like it took a lot to take Mr. Bamber out. June and Sheila were both found in Neville and June's bedroom. June was really close to the door. She'd been shot 7 times, and Sheila was on the other side of the bed, and she'd been shot twice. And it kind of looked like she'd shot herself, but the wounds were considered either contact or close contact, so it meant that the wounds were caused by the gun being extremely close to her skin. And the two boys were found in their beds, so it looked like they'd been sleeping and shot. However, there wasn't a sound moderator found on the gun. The gun was on Sheila's body, like resting kind of down her body. And there wasn't a sound moderator or telescopic sights on it. It was just the gun. So you'd think that the gunshots would have woken up, I say one of the kids was shot first, would have woken up the other one, because guns are loud, you know. It's a bit strange if they didn't wake up, and also like you'd think it would wake up everyone in the house. So both the police and the media just assumed that it had been Sheila. She'd gone crazy, killed her family, and then killed herself. But other family members, specifically Anne Eaton, who is Jeremy's cousin, was very suspicious. Said Jeremy was acting really strange, and that she'd never seen Sheila even use a gun, and that Sheila didn't like guns. She thought they were awful. So Anne Eaton was very suspicious, especially because Jeremy only lived 5 minutes drive away from the house, and he arrived there after the police, and the police had passed Jeremy on the way to the house, and he was driving extremely slowly, which if your family's in danger, you think you would try and get there as quickly as possible. There was also no signs of forced entry in the house, so it wasn't like there would have been like an intruder or anything like that. It just seemed like it happened inside the house or from someone who had access to the house, not somebody who would have to like break down a door. Like they would have had a key or whatever and locked the house after they left. So suspicions of Jeremy started to kind of rise after the funeral, because at the funeral he was kind of crying, putting on this big display of, I've just lost my family, I'm really upset. Like, he looked devastated. But then once the cameras, like the media, stopped rolling, he was kind of just cracking jokes and like acting really like normal, like as if nothing had ever happened, and like that he, like, his family aren't dead and he's attending the funeral. It was like nothing like that had happened. And I know a lot of people react to death in different ways. For instance, anything awkward that happens to me or bad that happens to me, I start laughing and then I'll start crying afterwards. So I kind of understand that, but I think that's too much to go from like almost not being able to walk because you're crying that much to cracking jokes is a bit strange. Anne Eaton and some of the family members were at the house trying to sort out some stuff at the house. Obviously they're trying to clear out the house because they might be selling things, and you know, they're trying to get stuff out of the house. And while they're there, they find the sound moderator from the gun in one of the cupboards, which to me seems like it hadn't been searched properly by the police, because surely you would have found that had you searched for it. And it had scratches on it and blood and a hair. And this is the bit that I find really strange. They didn't call the police straight away. They kind of kept the moderator. They took it home and examined it themselves, and then a couple of days later they called the police and were like, oh, we found this thing, you might want to come and get it. So the police came and got it, and DCI Jones saw the hair on it and was like, that's important, I'm going to get it to the lab. In transport to the lab, the hair got lost, so it couldn't be tested. But they did test the blood on the sound moderator, and they said it was either a mixture of June and Neville's blood or Sheila's blood, but they couldn't say for definite which of those two it was. So that implies that the sound moderator was definitely on the gun when it was used, and if it was used and Sheila was the one that used it and it was a mixture of June and Neville's blood, she would have had to take it off and put it in the cupboard before she killed herself, because with the sound moderator on the gun, it would have been physically impossible for her to shoot herself. She just wasn't like tall enough. She couldn't have reached the trigger. So that seems a bit strange to me, that she would take the sound moderator off and put it in the cupboard. Surely if you were trying to shoot yourself and you realised the sound moderator wouldn't work, you would take it off and put it next to you and then do it and shoot yourself. I don't know. It seems strange to me. When Sheila's body was examined, police and medical examiners both said that her hands were incredibly clean. She had perfectly manicured nails, like there was no residue on it, like that. Well, there was some lead residue, but that could be attributed to the use of everyday household items and not the use of a gun. So they highly doubt that she used a gun, and if she did, she would have had to clean up herself before she shot herself. But then, even then, surely there would be residue on her from shooting herself. But there was none at all. There was no blood from any of the other members, the family members, on her, only her own blood. There was no like dirt or anything on her feet, which you would assume if she'd had this massive fight with her dad in the kitchen, the parts of the broken crockery would have cut her feet and stuff like that. And there was sugar all over the floor. You would think there would be sugar on her feet, and there wasn't. So going back to the sound moderator, an expert said that the sound moderator, the blood on it most likely is Sheila's, because of the back spot that was on it would have had to have been a close contact or a contact wound, which Sheila was the only one that had those. Jeremy also didn't call 999. He called the police station directly, which he had to look up their phone number in a phone book. And in the phone book, when you look up the police's number, it said underneath in bold, in an emergency, call 999, because that's a number. It's easy, quick to remember, like, you get straight through to the police and they'll dispatch somebody. And Jeremy said he didn't think there would be any, like, difference in the time it would take for the police to respond. However, it did take him longer to find that number than it would have been to just ring 999. He also admitted to phoning his girlfriend, Julie, before he rang the police, which is a very strange thing to do. If your family's in trouble, you call the police straight away. It's not something that would ever go through my mind, is to ring my partner. Like, it's not normal. And there's a lot of people asking why Mr. Bamber wouldn't have rang the police himself rather than ring Jeremy. And Jeremy said that that was because his father didn't like having other people in their business. He would rather call Jeremy and have Jeremy sorted out than call the police and have the police sorted out, which to me again is very strange, and I don't really believe that. Because if someone was running around my house with a gun, I definitely would call the police. Wouldn't be someone else. An expert also said that Mr. Bamber probably wouldn't have been able to engage in any purposeful talk because of his wounds. His wounds wouldn't enable him to talk to anybody over the phone. So the conversation between Mr. Bamber and Jeremy was very unlikely. And also, the line going dead was practically impossible because with these obviously it was an old phone, the line stays open unless somebody hangs up. And when the police searched the house, the receiver was off the cradle, so Mr. Bamber hadn't hung up. So the only way that line would have gone dead is if Jeremy had hung up or somebody had hung up the phone on the other end, which it didn't happen. So again, a little inconsistency in his story. Another thing is that Jeremy told the police that Sheila was good with guns, she knew how to use all the guns, and that she had been target shooting with him before, which was an outright lie. A lot of people said she didn't like guns, she would never use them, they've never seen her with a gun, and these are from people who were quite close to Sheila. Also, the fact that Sheila would have had to fight her dad off in the kitchen is very unlikely. He was considerably bigger than her, so she would not have been able to physically overcome her dad. The drug that Sheila was being treated with had sedating side effects, so during the day that drug would have made her very sleepy and very inactive, and also her doctor said that he doesn't think she would have hurt her dad or her sons. She loved them very much, and she thought of her dad as an absolute amazing person. She felt so supported by him. But Sheila did say that she had some not so great feelings towards her mother, and the doctor said that he could see her potentially harming her mother, but not any of the other family members. Before the murders, several people who had seen Sheila in town and stuff had said she seemed really happy, pretty normal, just going about her daily business, not violent, not withdrawn or anything like that. She seemed really normal. So while doubts were raised about Jeremy, they didn't really have any solid proof that Jeremy had done anything, or any witnesses to say that Jeremy had done anything. But Jeremy's girlfriend, Julie, she had recently been broken up with by Jeremy. She was very upset about it, she really loved him. And she ended up going to the police and telling them that Jeremy had arranged to have his family killed, like a hitman kind of thing. And that when he phoned her the night of the murders, he had said, "It's finally done, like, blah blah blah, it's been a crazy night," and that he had to go. And then he called the police. And she said she didn't really think anything of it, she didn't really know what he was talking about, because it was 3 o'clock in the morning. He said it had been a crazy night, so she was like, oh, okay, like, he's having a crazy night. And she went back to bed, apologised to her roommate for waking her up, and went back to bed. But she told the police that Jeremy had been talking about killing his family for a while, like setting the house on fire and stuff like that, and that he didn't like them, and that he just wanted the money. And there was also an incident where he stole money from, I think it was a caravan site that the family owned, or some form of site that the family owned. He stole it from the like that site, like the cash box in that site. So he definitely had like an obsession with money. Like, he wanted this really nice life, this really extravagant life with all the money. So he thought the best way to do that would be to kill his whole family. This is what Julie said to the police. And so the police arrested Jeremy, and he told them that he had recently broken up with Julie, and that she was probably just upset, and wanted to get back at him for breaking up with him. So they arrested him and they took him to trial, and with all this evidence, like, it was all little bits before, like holes in his story and this, and then Julie came on the stand and she seemed really credible. She's like, I have no reason to lie about this, like, I'm not that crazy that I would, ruin his life to get back at him for something that he did to me. And they'd kind of asked why she hadn't come to the police earlier, and she was like, well, I loved him, I thought we were going to be together forever, and I was kind of scared, and all this stuff. And then Jeremy also said that Anne Eaton and the rest of his cousins kind of conspired against him, because if he wasn't there and he went to jail, then they would get all the money and the assets and stuff of the family. So that's why he said that's why they kind of had their doubts about him and were casting doubts on him. But Jeremy was sentenced to life in prison, and to this day he still preaches his innocence. He's been in the news quite a lot lately saying that he's innocent, he has things that he can use to prove it, and he's got lawyers working on it, attorneys, and so we'll see what comes of that. I hope something new comes up, would be quite interesting. I don't quite know what I believe. I think it's quite interesting, because I think obviously there's a lot of stuff that points to Jeremy, and I do think he knows something about it, or definitely has done it. But then I kind of get a bit weird about Anne Eaton keeping the sound moderator. Like, I just don't understand why you wouldn't just call the police straight away when you found it and be like, oh, hey, we found this thing, come and get it. Yeah, so comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you next week.